Good afternoon and welcome to the 210th episode of the Georgia Farm Bureau Georgia Prep Sports Drive for the GHSA State Title. It's Wednesday and it's a special Wednesday because the state championships are tipping off in 54 minutes. So on today's show, I'm going to make my picks. We aren't going to get too ahead of ourselves because obviously the games go the next 4 days. We'll focus mainly on today's matchups, tomorrow's. We're going to bring in John Morgo at 12:20. He is an NFHS broadcaster who I think has done 40 high school basketball games this season already. So I said during football season, I think Rusty and Najee probably went to the most games out of anyone in the state. John Morgo's up there with basketball. He'll have some great insight. And then in the last segment, I'll make all my picks for these matchups. I'm not going to change it after today. And then I'm going to go back to a story that I actually wrote a couple years ago on Southwest Macon's basketball team during the 1979 season. I think it's so interesting because we all celebrate high school football in Georgia, which it just has proven to be the biggest, the best. You just look at all the players sent to the draft, but you really don't get to see the same sort of metric to gauge the success of high school basketball. And that Southwest Macon team in 1979 was really special, and that was a really pivotal era for the entire state of Georgia. That was following the integration. A lot of these programs really took off, and that team right there put Georgia high school basketball on the map by playing a national schedule, having big wins over Oak Hill, just packing out, selling out every single arena. And then they were actually deemed by ESPN at one point as perhaps the best high school basketball team of all time. So I'll have some insight on that. But let's go ahead and get started with today's first matchups at 1 o'clock. The Clinch County girls against Lake Oconee Academy in the Class A Division II state championships. So Lake Oconee County, they won Class A public last year. Obviously this Division II and Division I is a new dynamic. I said in football I thought it gave teams more of an opportunity because it sent the bigger public schools that used to be in Class A public up to Class A Division I. Example, Irwin County. That opened up a great opportunity for Bowden this last year, who knows, maybe they would have beaten Irwin County. But I don't really think you can say the same about basketball, whereas it made it easier. We'll get to the boys matchup, a perfect example. Charlton County, did it really get easier for them? They had to play Green Forest Christian, the defending Class A private champs, in the semifinals. But what about this Clinch County, Lake Oconee County game? Well, Lake Oconee County, the clear stat to watch before tip-off, they've allowed 18 points per game in the last 2 rounds. Truly something you don't ever see. They're coming off a big win in the semifinals. Last year was their first ever state title, pretty much returned to everyone. And they're going up against a Clinch County team that they have won 4 previous state titles. They won one in 1993. That was their last. But if I have this correct, I think the team Lake Oconee County beat in the last round was the region champ out of Clinch County's region. And they did have a big win over Taylor County in the last round. I thought Taylor County might have been able to give Lake Oconee Academy a tough game and potentially take it. But yeah, they beat Mount Zion in the last round, and then Turner County. So Turner County is the team that beat Clinch County in that region, and Lake Oconee County beat them 58-23. So that game's not even close. It's going to be a really tough matchup for Clinch County to try to put up points against this team. Hold on one sec. I'm pulling up the guide right now just to see if there's anything else in our preview that stands out before I move on to the boys. But yeah, a big thing right there. They pretty much held Mount Zion Carroll to 11 points until like late in the fourth quarter. So they play with a slow pace. It's just overwhelming, swarming defense. They do have the ability to score offensively. They take good shots. But, I mean, that's the key. You're going to have to put up 40 points to beat this team. And 18 points surrendered the last 2 rounds. That is a great sign if you're a Titans fan. So, yeah, a great fact about this game also in our Did You Know, you can go to Score Atlanta and download our program. It has an interesting fact on each matchup. But Clinch County and Lake Oconee County faced off in the 2021 Elite Eight, so not last season, the season before. And Clinch County did win that one, 57-53. Obviously, Lake Oconee County has won a state championship since. And Jada Williams, the senior guard for Lake Oconee Academy. She's not the tallest. I think she's only 5'3" or 5'4", but man, she can really rack up the steals and make it difficult for any opponent coming up the court. Clinch County does have Destiny Tolbert. She's been a big-time scorer for them. And then Dean, their forward, she had 16 and 13 in Clinch County's latest win. I think it's going to be a good game, but I think the big storyline right there is just Lake Oconee Academy's defense in these last few rounds. Then at 3 o'clock, this is a huge matchup for the boys Division II. You have a Charlton County team where, what's the saying, to be the champs, you got to beat the champs. They did that last round against Green Forest Christian. Probably the biggest favorite. You could argue Wheeler, but pre-tournament, the biggest odds-on favorite to win a state title this year. Where Wheeler, we thought maybe Norcross, maybe Grayson, maybe these other teams could give them, like Newton, could compete with them. Green Forest just seemed to be shoulders above everyone else. But Charlton County, they get an incredible victory. They bank in a game-winning three-pointer. I think it was at the buzzer to take down Green Forest Christian. But now they have to play Wilkinson County, a team that has won 10 state titles. They're the Bill Russell of high school basketball. They've never lost in the finals. Incredible for a team to do that. I mean, what are the odds of, because it's not like they're winning every single year. I don't think they've won a state title probably in 7 seasons. But when they get to this championship stage, they have been unbeatable. And in the last round, they certainly impressed. A huge win over Macon County. So let's see. This is the first ever matchup between Charlton County and Wilkinson County. Another interesting tidbit right there. They've played an incredibly challenging schedule. They're obviously going for their 11th all-time state title. They had a big 46-42 quarterfinals victory. And then, 85-63 against Macon County. Justin Stanley, 25 points. But Charlton County, they do have some great shooters. I talked about the 3 at the end of the game. Let's see who that was. I think that was Elias Williams. And he ended up with 21 points, 15 rebounds. They also have Jarvis Wright. He's only a sophomore, but he was the Region 2 Offensive Player of the Year. So we'll see. Charlton County, they're 29-2. Clearly, this is the best season they've ever had. They beat Green Forest Christian, and then if they beat Wilkinson County, that's one of the strongest playoff runs you can imagine, and it would be a season that goes down in history. And Charlton County has never won a state title. So that would be a huge accomplishment for the Indians. So that will tip off at 3 o'clock, an incredible doubleheader in Class A Division II right there. So moving on to, okay, I got to make my picks, though. Make my picks on those. I'm going with Lake Oconee Academy. We have them number 1 in the poll. And then it's tough, but I've got to go with Wilkinson County. What's up?
So the guy Jarvis Wright hit a game winner against Green Forest to send it to the state championship.
Yep.
Then Jarvis Wright averages 20 a game. And you got this guy named Ellis Williams, he averages a double-double. They had 4 other guys make all region this season. 2 guys, one guy won Offensive Player of the Year, the other guy won the Player of the Year.
Okay. So, yeah, Jarvis Wright, he is, you said he's the guy that hit the game-winning 3. So he had 21 points. He's their 3-point shooter. He shoots a lot of threes, averages about 20 points a game. Najee said they had 4 players make all-region team. Their head coach, David Bailey, region coach of the year. And then Elias Williams, sophomore center, is averaging a double-double, as Najee pointed out. He had 17 and 13 against Green Forest. That's interesting because Green Forest, I think they have 2 7-footers, one of the best teams in the state regardless of classification. Man, this is a tough pick. So who's it going to be? Is it going to be the team that just beat the defending champs, team that beat one of the best teams that's having the best year in school history? Or is Wilkinson County going to continue that trend of never losing in the finals? Do they just have something special going? Man, that is tough. I'm going to go with Wilkinson County, though. I might regret that. I just think I've seen them in Macon before. I think win 3 of their state titles, and there's just something that they're doing where they just get locked in, and they're a great playoff team. And we'll see. But, I mean, what a game that's going to be. Definitely will be watching that one. I know GPB is televising it. I think it's on their GPB.
So Twitch, so YouTube.
Yeah, it will be digitally will probably be the easiest way to access it. GPB has a sub-channel. It's not their main one. I forgot. It's like GPB Intelligence or something like that. So it will be televised, but we'll be tweeting out the links to stream it. Must-see matchup right there. Can Charlton County cap the best season in school history? They've obviously got sophomores stepping up, and you cannot discount that last win they had over Green Forest. Yeah, it was a close game, but that's one of the most dominant teams in the state. So real quick, I'm going to go over 4A because I'm going to talk a lot about that with John Morgo coming up. But Baldwin and Griffin at 5 o'clock tonight. We know Baldwin can beat Griffin. I was actually on the show looking at Baldwin after they had a close loss to Griffin, and they kind of started racking up some big wins, and I wrote a blog. I said, watch out for Baldwin. I think they're going to beat Griffin. And they really won that game, I think by 13 or 15 points. But then Griffin shows up in the region championship and beats them. So you got to credit Griffin for that, because when the stakes were high to get that top seed, they showed up, and they have that series now 2-1. Griffin, I believe, had been in 5 semifinals before and had never won. So they broke that barrier. They're in the championship for the first time. One of the programs that people consider to be one of the better ones to never win the state title. They've had some heartbreaking losses in the playoffs. But then with Baldwin, they're a 3-time state champion, but they haven't won since 1988. So it's a similar situation where they've been incredible year in and year out with the talent, but it has been a while for them also. In Griffin's first win against Baldwin, Baldwin is a very big team. So is Griffin. I think that's what makes the matchup interesting. But Griffin won that first matchup without making a single three-pointer. They won the region championship, I think, with only one made three-pointer. They don't have to rely on that. I will say, though, and I don't know how much I should go by this, but when I was at Fort Valley State after the game, I was down in the tunnel outside the locker room, and I don't think these injuries were necessarily going to sideline these girls, but there were definitely some ankle injuries. It wasn't just ice. I've iced after basketball games. These girls were in some serious pain, so maybe it's just a high ankle sprain situation. Griffin had a really physical game against Hardaway, where Baldwin, they just cruised past Holy Innocents. Holy Innocents has some of the best guards in the state. They were so red hot coming into that matchup. And Hardaway is a great team too. They're going to be really good the next few seasons. I do have Griffin ranked number 1. My pick was Holy Innocents though, and so I'm going to go with Baldwin. It's probably one of my more upset-minded picks, seeing that Griffin has won 2 out of 1. But I think they broke that obstacle by getting to the state championships. That's a big accomplishment. I just think Baldwin has had what it takes, and I was just so impressed with Madison Ruff, Neal, all the size Baldwin has. It's guaranteed to be a close game. They all have been this year. I think Baldwin, they have a chance. They definitely have a chance in that one. It will be close. And then in the boys' game, Fayette County and Pace Academy, I'm going to wait to make my pick after I talk to John Morgo because he's seen more Pace Academy basketball this season than anyone. So let's go ahead and take our first break and thank our sponsors, Georgia Farm Bureau.
Our mission has always been to support Georgia farmers. That's why we created Georgia Farm Bureau Mutual Insurance Company, providing financial protection that farmers needed. While this remains the same today, we've grown to protect all Georgians through home, auto, and life insurance. From the very beginning and into the future, we stand for every Georgia community.
We are our Farm Bureau.
All right, welcome back. So it's GPB Knowledge. That's the channel. I was close. I said intelligence, but it's GPB Knowledge. So you can DVR those games on your TV or Twitch. That's where I watched a lot of the football state championships. Had no problems with it. The streams were great. Was able to even multitask on my phone and put it in the corner of the screen. So definitely tune into these matchups. I mean, this is a really exciting 4-day lineup. But let's go ahead and welcome on John Morgo.
Craig, do you hear me?
Loud and clear. John, thank you so much for coming on. How's it going?
It's going pretty good. How about yourself?
Doing well. So I'm excited about these championships tipping off. I think today's matchups are really exciting. I covered the Class A Division II, those battles, Clinch County, Lake Oconee County, Wilkinson County, and Charlton County. But then these 4A ones, you got to see how these played out at Fort Valley State. Before we go, big picture, what do you think stands out to you in these 4A matchups?
They're going to be very physical down low, especially the matchup between Griffin and Baldwin. And I caught a little bit of your comments before the break, and I think you're right on the ball in terms of what Griffin has been a little bit banged up, and they only made 1 3-pointer in their game against Hardaway. And going to your point about how they prefer to go inside, but Baldwin is just so physical underneath, especially Cassidy Neal, who had a great game against Holy Innocents. They had a strong first quarter, 16-8, and kind of coasted from there to a 58-45 victory over the Holy Innocents Golden Bears. And it's kind of interesting, all 3 of these semifinal, well, 3 of the 4 semifinal games, very defensive, physical-oriented ball games. The only one that got over 60 points was Fayette County in their victory over Benedictine. And so it's going to be a tough battle underneath. And you're right, Baldwin does have the size, does have the bodies to really make it a tough go for Griffin. I really was impressed with how they dispatched Holy Innocents, because Holy Innocents has got some great scores. They bottled up by Madison Ruff and Cassidy Neal.
No,
What
100%. And then what do you think, though, just about the overall ball handling ability of Baldwin? I also thought even when they got in the paint, they were able to knock down jumpers, but so many times you see girls they're out of control. They'll throw it too hard off the backboard. These bigs for Baldwin, they have a lot of touch, and obviously they can rebound too, but I just thought they finished really well against Holy Innocents. I mean, they dominated that matchup.
You're right, especially Cassidy Neal. 16. She had. I didn't get a final count, but she did have 16 points up to one point. I think she finished close to 20. But especially underneath, getting those loose balls, getting those 50-50 balls, and a very soft touch putting back up. I really didn't notice that fast break that you were mentioning. Again, my partner Daniel was on the call for this particular ball game, so I was just kind of like watching everything as a whole develop for Griffin and for Baldwin against Holiness. But again, Holiness is the number one team going into these championships, and Baldwin just kind of stuffed them. They really didn't have an answer for Ruff. They really didn't have an answer for Neal, and even Janiah Walker did some good things for the Bravettes as well.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it wasn't fast paced in that sense. I just meant that some of these matchups we watch, it's like you're kind of nervous with the point guard who's bringing it up. They might turn it over. I just felt like all their guards had the ability to protect the ball, and then once they get it down low, I mean they're really dangerous. And I mean they had some great no look passes. So I don't think Griffin is. I mean they're not a team that's probably going to try to press them because they got the size. There wouldn't really be a point in that. I just think overall their ball handling ability, they've got. I mean even their bigs, they aren't really turnover prone, even though they do just have a kind of aggressive, flashy style almost in how they're able to get to the basket.
Yes, yeah, Baldwin. They do get to the basket very well. They do are able to play that physical ball game. And again, we'll just see how well Griffin is able to handle it. I mean, Griffin's got some great guards on their own side, especially even though Leah Turner really didn't do that much. But I tell you, the player who is there, who Baldwin's going to have to watch out for, is Aaliyah Durham. Great performance against Hardaway, 26 points in that one, and also really and Zy Thompson. She's the other kind of like in their big three. She was, even though she only had about 15, 13 points against Hardaway, she was kind of everywhere. She was really the person who was trying to get Griffin going, get them involved, get them really excited, really just energized. And it's going to be what the matchup that's going to be important here is going to be Cassidy Neal against Zy Thompson. You think maybe she'll go against Dunham? I don't think so. I think they'll match her against Thompson simply because of how forceful she was moving the basketball against Hardaway.
Great point. Yeah, Cassidy Neal, the sophomore, Zy Thompson, the senior for Griffin. Obviously, they faced already this season. And yeah, Zy Thompson was definitely the spark. She had some foul trouble in that game. Once she came back, they're able to catch fire, overcome that deficit against Hardaway. What do you think, though, about Madison Ruff for Baldwin, the point guard, going up against those really talented Holy Innocents guards? I think that's got to be a big confidence boost for her because obviously this game might be won down the paint, but I think Madison Ruff had a really big semifinal night.
Well, she did 14 points. Again, my point totals are not exact, but I had her with 14 going into the third and fourth quarter. But she only had one 3-pointer early on in the ball game as Baldwin got to that early lead against Holy Innocents and just kind of coasted from there. So what Madison Ruff and her sister Morgan Ruff was what she was able to do again is get good momentum, get good mid-range jumpers, and just move the ball around so that if it goes inside, they can get it to Neal. If it stays outside, she can find an opening just to put the ball in the hoop.
Yep, you also have Janae Walker, Jasmine Williams, Zakiria Pascal for Baldwin. Yeah, it'll be a tremendous matchup. Let's pivot to the boys, though. You've seen a ton of Pace Academy this season. I think one of the best things they have going for them is just the incredibly difficult schedule they played in, the battles they had in region play, That Lovett loss obviously was tough for them, but they're just a great team. They've got a ton of length. They got some young guys that have multi-year starting experience. What do you think we're going to see from them on the state championship stage tonight?
Well, getting back again, Pace Academy again played a really tough schedule. They even played out of the continental United States. They played a couple of games in London, England, not London, Ohio, London, England, against two it's a highly tough national competition, Mater Dei and Christ the King out of New York. Lost both of them. In fact, out of their 7 losses, only one has incurred in the state of Georgia, and that was that loss to Lovett. Actually, I'm sorry, they lost 2 games in the state of Georgia, one to Lovett and one to McDonough early. Milton was the other one, yeah.
Yep.
But they got some, and going into the season, you were wondering how this team was going to respond. They lose Josh Reed to Cincinnati. They lose Bryson Tiller to IMG Academy in Florida. How are they going to respond? And they responded by playing probably the best team-oriented games I've ever seen. Eric Chatfield, Kyle Green have been absolutely stalwart defenders, and it's always been somewhat different for the Knights as they go along the season. For instance, in their game against Westover, a very clutch game in a very difficult environment because Westover from Albany, it was like that place was the Fort Valley was a suburb of Albany with all the red that was in there from the Patriot fans. Kyle Green gets 17 points, but he gets it on only 1 field goal. He gets 15 from the line. Chatfield has 12. LJ Moore, it is in their offense from outside. It's either Lamar Moore or Kendall Evans. Either one or the two is going to give them points for them all night. And again, Chatfield is just a incredible defender for them. But they're just so balanced, really. It's never the same person every night. It's always somebody different. And this is going to be a tough for Fayette County. Fayette County is going to want to run this game. They're going to want to run. They're going to want to score. They're going to want to keep the tempo high. They got R.J. Kennedy. He'll be very strong player for them. Keith Gillespie and Sean Van Dorn. I think Gillespie is going to be the kind of like the X factor of this ball game for Fayette County. How he's going to go. An interesting thing in that game with Benedictine. Benedictine actually had a pretty good rally toward the end of that ball game. They were only down by maybe 5 points with 50 seconds to go. Chance to get it to within 3. One possession with 30. Jordan Dorsey got a fast break, but he was too much underneath the basket, couldn't hit the layup. If he did, it would have made it a 3-point game with 30 seconds left. It would have been a much different ball game. And Pace and Sherman White, he left 2 assistant coaches behind while he and the team came back to Atlanta following the victory. So they scouted that whole game. So they watched that. They're going to know exactly what Fayette County's tendencies are and, more importantly, how to attack them.
100%. So let's hone in on that matchup real quick. So with Keith Gillespie, we saw it from the opening tip-off. Fayette County wins it, 2 passes. He's in the corner. They're up 3-0. He knocks down the shot. He has 3 3-pointers in the first quarter. But then what we saw from Gillespie to fuel that 17-point performance, he seemed to understand when they had that lead, when not to take the shot, let some of the clock go off, and then drive. But Pace Academy, I think they have a lot more size and length than Benedictine did. So he'll have trouble kind of finishing at the rim and driving, but they're going to need him to do that. He can't just camp out and take those shots. So, I mean, I think I was impressed with Pace Academy's defense, the overall game strategy against Westover. But when you're watching Pace Academy, I know you're doing so much. You're writing down the stats. You're calling the game. But when we talked to Daniel Bolton yesterday, he was saying that Sharman White, he's able to go man-to-man. He's able to go 2-3 defense. He's able to go 3-2. So knowing that Fayette County is going to push this tempo, do you expect to see Pace Academy just show a lot of different looks defensively?
Oh, no question. no question. They're gonna come out in different looks. They're gonna try to confuse Fayette County, but Andre Flynn, the head coach over there, Fayette County, he knows what to expect. I mean, he's seen the film on pace. He knows that they're gonna try to confuse him, try to mess him up often in the same possession. So we all know that Fayette County is going to go to R.J. Kennedy and Gillespie. I don't think Gillespie will get nearly as many open looks as he did against Benedictine. I think Pace is going to get a little more in their face, and it's going to be again on that battles inside. As you said, they have the length. They've got L.J. Moore. They've got Kendall Evans, and also Davis Rice and Ben Leach coming off the bench for them. And they've got some pretty decent bench players who can help them out. Chandler Bang, not the person from Friends, the basketball player. He's also kind of the sixth man. Honestly, when I saw that roster and I saw that name, I thought someone was playing a joke on me, but turns enough, that's his actual name. It's going to be interesting to see how Matt Stewart handles that call when he works that game tonight at 7:00. It'll be a lot interesting. But again, Pace has got a lot of people that while they may not really stand out in the box score, they're going to do those things like play the good defense. If you play a Sherman White team, you know you're going to have tough defense coming at you pretty much for the entire time.
100%. They really are a great team. They have that team effort. You can just see it so apparently on the field, on the court. R.J. Kennedy in that Benedictine game, I know he sparked single-handedly, I think in the second quarter, a 9-0 run. I don't see Pace Academy allowing that to happen. They're going to communicate. Once these players get hot, they're going to lock down. But then I was looking at Fayette County. They also had a huge lead on Bainbridge, I think, in the quarterfinals, and Bainbridge came back. So that's another thing. It's like once they get a hot start, sometimes they'll let the other team back in it. But what do you think about a potential X factor in that game being Sean Van Dorn, a guy that we didn't see come on and make a lot of big plays until the second half against Benedictine to help keep them out in front?
Well, you're right about how Fayette County has a habit of letting letting their foot off the gas just a little bit and allowing the other team to come back. Caleb Jones wound up with 31 points for the Cadets in that semifinal game, and he had, I think, 10 or 11 in that fourth quarter alone as they tried to come back. But they're going to need Van Dorn to really patrol the paint and get those offensive rebounds, and it's going to be a matter of where Moore is. Is Moore going to be on the outside? And is he going to, and as soon as that shot comes out, if he is on the outside, is Moore going to have to come back and crash the glass and try to muscle out Van Dorn? That's going to be the interesting thing. Or will Van Dorn be almost exclusively inside and make sure he tries to occupy the space that he needs to prevent the defensive rebound and make sure if there is an offensive rebound that he gets it. So it's going to be him and Moore when they collide underneath. That's going to be where things go. And Van Dorn had 15 points. I know Daniel was very much impressed with Sean Van Dorn, especially in that third quarter in that game with Benedictine, where they had it was 58-41 Fayette County at the end of that third quarter. And again, it was only a 6-point final.
Yep, it's a really interesting trio right there. R.J. Kennedy, I mean, obviously, if they find a way to win this game, he might even end up being Class 4A Player of the Year. He's been that good. Keith Gillespie, he's got the outside shot. Can he also make those plays, drive to the basket, maybe draw some fouls? He did take some trips to the foul line against Benedictine. And then Sean Van Dorn, he's just that versatile, above-the-rim player. He's great defensively, but if he can give them those second chance baskets, and I think another important aspect in this game is, I mean, a state championship game with this type of crowd is always those big highlight reel plays. We saw it with Benedictine. Once LaDon Bryant had that dunk over R.J. Kennedy, that's when Benedictine sparked that run. So can Sean Van Dorn do what he does and just wow the crowd, have these outstanding blocks or dunks or putbacks and get them playing with a lot of energy? I think that will be something to watch for.
Yeah, exactly. And the most important thing, if Fayette County does get a lead, can they keep their foot on the gas? Can they keep the momentum going and not allow that kind of let off kind of coast for a little bit to allow the other team, pace in this case, to come back. And of course, the crowd is going to be very important. Fayette County, they'll probably travel. It's a Wednesday night. It's going to make it a little harder for the casual fan, the casual pace fan, the casual Fayette County fan to make that trek down to Macon. I think Fayette County will probably they'll turn out pretty well, and I'm really not sure if Pace will have that similar crowd, similar energy. But one thing about this Pace squad, they only had the one home game during this state final run, first round. That's why losing to Lovett in that region title game was a bit of a blessing for them, because it forced them to go to some pretty difficult places: Walnut Grove, Baldwin, and of course the incredible pro Westover crowd that we saw down in Fort Valley.
Yep. And then one last point on the Fayette County Benedictine matchup. There was a feel to it where it was a little unconventional. Just Benedictine, I've never seen a team substitute more players into a game my entire life, 5 at a time, just seemingly every other possession. And when you're watching Fayette County with their pace, you could see these Benedictine guards, whether it was Jordan Dorsey, Makai Hampton, coming up from behind in their full court press and just forcing all these turnovers. I think turnovers are going to be big, but I also don't think Pace Academy is going to be doing the 5-man subs and that unconventional press.
Yeah, Frank Williams, I mean, I was calling him line changes because that's essentially what they were, 5-on-5. And then he would keep them on the bench for, I counted at one time, it was 23 seconds. And then he sent the starters back in. So it was literally one trip up and down the court, starters came back in. It was very weird. It was fun, and the precision with how much with the people, they stand up, they come back in a line, they come back in absolute order, which you would expect from a military school like Benedictine. Yes, Pace is not going to do that. They'll be a little more conventional in terms of their substitution patterns, in terms of bringing people in for a little bit of rest or foul trouble. So like I said, I don't think Sherman White is going to play it the way Frank Williams did. It would be funny if he did, but I don't think he would. He's more important with winning the basketball game than making a fashion statement, as it were.
Yeah, that was truly something you don't see every day. Real quick though, I mean, what do you think about these other big matchups? We really liked the 6A girls one, River Ridge and Lovejoy. Obviously, Hebron Christian, Lumpkin County, you saw both of them play. What stands out to you just in the next couple of days?
Well, getting to that Lumpkin County Hebron Christian game, Lumpkin came out so strong in their semifinal matchup. How they just absolutely blew away Cavalry Day from Savannah, and Hebron Christian had a tough fight with Wesleyan and beat them by 7. If Lumpkin shoots as well as they did against Hebron Christian, they're going to have an easy matchup. And the other 3A matchup, Sandy Creek against Cedar Grove, it's a revenge. I didn't realize this until now, but it's a revenge football game. And because of the football a couple months ago at Center Park Stadium. So I think definitely, and since a lot of people play 2 sports, there will be some people on that basketball team who played football who know it all too well. That's going to be an incredibly charged atmosphere. And I kind of like Sandy Creek in this basketball game. I don't know why. I can't explain it. But the way they handled Cross Creek in the semis, winning by 17, it just seems like they're the more balanced and focused team.
Yep, Cross Creek was the 2-time defending champs. Let's see some of these other big ones. What do you think about, let's see, the Kell girls against Warner Robins, and then Kell against Eagles Landing in the boys. 2 great matchups. I think it is beneficial to Kell. I mean, that's going to be on Thursday, but having the boys and girls play one after another, both have a chance to win their first ever state titles. I think that could end up being a really historic night for the Longhorns.
And that's good for Kel. The fans can come; they can make a day of it. I'm certain the Kel administration was going to make some allowances for the students to come down and spend the whole day there. Kel boys, they are another one of those travel teams. They played at the Tarkanian Classic in Las Vegas. It seems like whenever there's a national tournament, they are there. They're not afraid to go on the road, play a tough team. They played Green Forest They actually played Green Forest twice, I believe, which during the regular season part of showcase games, which is something you really don't see that much. They're the more traveled. They're the more experienced teams. I'm not really sure about the Kell girls. I have not seen them play, so I really can't give an honest opinion of what their matchup looks like. But for the boys, yeah, I think they're going to be the more tested, the more certainly the more balanced team in that particular matchup.
For sure. And then, John, thank you so much for coming on. But how can people follow your work? I know you guys dropped the podcast yesterday. I still need to check that out. You guys were covering the potential of an NHL team returning to Atlanta. I got to check that out. I know you guys are covering.
Talked a lot about the John Moran situation in Memphis, and we gave a wrap up on the 3A, 4A. It's called The Last Three Guys to Do a Podcast. A little bit of a wink there, a little meta name there. You can catch us on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your favorite podcasts. My website is johnmorgo.com. We have some links on there. And my Twitter handle is John _ that little line that's there, Morgo, Morgo. And you spelled my name right, so I'm always grateful for that.
Absolutely. And yeah, I listened to last week's. You guys were covering the Quinn Snyder news with the Hawks. Thought you guys brought up some great points. Before we let you go, though, just to give your podcast a little tease, what was your kind of overall sentiment of that hire?
Of Quinn Snyder? Well, think short term, I think it's going to be a good hire for the Hawks. In the long term, it's just a matter of whether or not he can get Trae Young to buy in on that. But to buy in, because it seems like once Trae kind of loses, I don't want to say loses attention because that's not the right word. Once Trae kind of tunes out the coach, the whole team kind of goes along with him. So he kind of sets the tone. So it's just a matter for Quinn. Can he and Trae Young be an effective partnership with the Hawks going into the rest of the season? I think they're going to make the playoffs in that little playing tournament. I think they're going to get there. But in terms of what they do after that, can they find that magic that they did 2 years ago where they just destroyed Philadelphia's will to live? I don't think so. But maybe they'll prove me wrong. I hope they do.
Yeah, I thought that was the best point you guys brought up. The Hawks having that huge series win over the top-seeded 76ers. How did you tie that into kind of what's been going on with Trae, the coaches, this decision, and just, I wouldn't necessarily say clouds, but that are surrounding the future direction of the Atlanta Hawks?
Well, they caught lightning in a bottle, and once they did that, they kind of bought into their own hype, really. And they kind of stopped doing that work that they needed to do to improve themselves on a daily basis. They kind of went stagnant. They kind of went flat. They kind of regressed a little bit. They just didn't do the hard work. I mean, they just thought that, okay, we don't have to change now. We don't have to improve. We can just do what we've been doing, and we can make the elite. And last season was kind of a wake-up call that they didn't have to do that. They have to still put the hard work and the grit they needed to become champions, and they didn't do that. And now they tuned out Nate McMillan. Now Quinn Snyder's coming in. It's a good choice. So he's got to get them energized, but more importantly, he's got to get them realizing that that series with Philadelphia is the start of the journey. It's not the apex. The apex is when you win a championship. You just can't, beat a good team like that and expect things to roll in for you. You've got to keep the work going. If anything, you got to work harder now that you are on everyone's radar, and they just didn't do it.
100%. And so, obviously, we still got 4 more days of basketball, but what is up next for John Morgo after basketball season?
That's a very good question. I'll be working with in the meantime, I'll be working with Georgia State doing their softball, their Sun Belt Conference home games on ESPN Plus. So that's going to start on March 24th with Coastal Carolina. I'll be backing up Dave Cohen on baseball. I think I've got at least one game on baseball, backing up Mr. Cohen as he does his Georgia State duties. But I'm always looking for something else. I'm sure I'll be handling a couple of pace games. That's in their spring sports schedule. That's to be announced at a later date. But hey, I'm just open to whatever comes in.
Yeah, and then Najee was just interested. Give the audience just a kind of breakdown. How many games did you go to this year? How you got
Gosh.
started in calling these high school games, and just getting into covering Georgia sports, not just in high school, college as well.
Well, it's connections. That's all it is. It's just connections, networking. I started out I really started out doing stats for 680 The Fan games. And then I kind of went and said, well, look, I want to do play-by-play, so let me work with a school just to get good at it. And I worked with Norcross for a couple seasons, got good at it, or got better at it. I don't think I'm at the level I want to be. I think I'm getting there, but I'm not at that level yet. You can definitely see progress, and then it's just making connections. I made connections with a bunch of people at NF, which was the predecessor of NFHS, which I guess is you can call IHI or NHSBN. Did some stuff. I got a couple of showcases with them. And then I've worked with Georgia State doing softball and women's basketball, but then a couple things happened, COVID naming one of them, and I'm getting the Georgia State stuff back. I worked Towns County High School, did their radio for 2 years, and I worked did some stuff with Georgia Gwinnett and their sports information. One of their announcers had this Pace Academy opening. He couldn't do it, so he knew me from Georgia Gwinnett, called me up and said, hey, John, can you come aboard, do our Pace game? So I've been doing Pace for 2 years, did their basketball for the last 2 years, and I've also run into the SUV, Sports Utility Vehicle TV. I've known them for a while, so they really brought me on board for a lot of their showcase games. They stream the events like the Hawks Naismith Classics, the Play for a Change, the event at Norcross. So that really is what bolstered my games in between NFHS, between the playoffs, between Pace, between SUV. I've done about 40 high school games, boys and girls, this season. So that is definitely a record for me. Never done that much. And I think you can tell I hope you can tell in terms of my call quality that the improvement is there. It's getting there. I don't think I'll ever be where I want to be, but as long as people want me on their broadcasts, hey, more power to it.
Awesome. Well, the word is out, John. I'm glad this year has been a busy one for you. I know it's going to stay that way. So, yeah, people can find you, John_Morgo on Twitter. I look forward to talking to you about some of these results this week with the high school basketball. But, John, really thank you so much for coming on. Great stuff.
Oh, no problem, Craig. Always happy to do it. You're welcome on our podcast anytime.
All right, let's do it. All right.
Great.
So there goes John. We really appreciate just all the hard work he does covering. Obviously, it's not just high school. He's been doing work with Reinhardt, Sun Belt, Georgia State, but it's guys like John that step up and cover a ton of games. That's what is just so important in elevating the state and all the talent. He's been one of the true champions in that department. But let's just get straight into how I wanted to close the show. So as for my pick in the boys game, I'm going to go with Pace Academy. That's who I said at the beginning of the playoffs. I really like Fayette County. I had so much fun watching them. I think in order for them to win, Sean Van Dorn, he's going to have to come out in the first half and set the tone. I think if he has those highlight plays I was talking about, they have a chance to get that energy going. There were times where I thought Westover looks like they were frustrating Pace Academy, but then they were just so resolved with their game plan and just knocking down all those free throws. I think they ended up going 15 of 17 in the fourth quarter. You do that again, it's going to be hard to beat you when you're shooting at that percentage. And Coach Sharman White has a chance to win his 10th all-time GHSA State Title. He won 7 at Miller Grove. I probably was there for 4 of them, and now he's looking to get his 3rd at Pace Academy. And he'd probably have more, but he left coaching Georgia High School for a couple seasons to coach at Georgia State. So he came right back in, and here he is looking for his 3rd state title at Pace Academy. Truly incredible what Coach White has been doing. Couldn't say enough good things about him and how he's raised the bar in Georgia. So speaking of kind of the history of Georgia high school basketball, I'm going to go ahead and highlight what I was talking about with the 1979 Southwest Macon team. We're going to pull up a picture in a second right here. So this is the team that many consider to be the greatest high school basketball team in Georgia history. I was asked by the GHSA to write a story. In 2019, they were celebrating the 40th anniversary of their championship. I had a couple days to write the story, and someone recommended a book to me. It's called Ducks Boys, the greatest high school basketball team in Georgia history. I forgot when it came out. You can go to Amazon. It's got 5-star reviews. It's only 151 pages. It took me a day to read. I couldn't put it down. It goes over their entire season, and the stories are just so incredible. It's a true window back in time into an era where high school basketball was being celebrated in New York, Virginia, some of Indiana, California, but a truly great Georgia team hadn't yet broke to the scene and gotten those big wins. So I'm going to go ahead and just read this. It's a quick story I wrote on what they were able to do, and then I suggest everyone, it's only $7.95 to download the book, maybe order it used if you want, but I just enjoyed reading it so much. So let's go over and look at the accomplishments, and then really just get excited for the history that's about to go down in that same arena momentarily. There was something very special about to take place in the heart of Georgia. Don Duck Richardson had transformed the Southwest Macon basketball program into a powerhouse since stepping in as head coach. He led the program to its first state title during the 1973 season and saw the Patriots collect their second championship in 1975. The program had grown into a winning machine and was producing college-ready prospects at an outstanding rate. Coach Richardson had a passion for excellence. Let's pull that picture back up. He had a passion for excellence and also style. We see it now. A lot of coaches are looking sharp on the sidelines, but he always was rocking that outfit, a true presence on the sideline right there. All right, so he was known for his excellence, everything he did, the way he dressed, the way he practiced, the discipline. He demanded it and was very intense. Their point guard who wrote the story, or wrote the book on it, Henry Gross, he is number 10, third from the right on the bottom row. He was the point guard on that team, surrounded with so many players that I'll talk about in a sec. But the way he describes these intense practices, the whole attitude was, this is it. This is the best team we're ever going to have. They had just won a state title before it, and they didn't want to leave any stone unturned. They knew that they had a special opportunity. So fundamentals and team play were indicative in the Patriots' brand of basketball. The relentless training in the offseason made it second nature by the time the season rolled around. They reached the semifinals in 1976 and then fell short in the finals in 1977. It wasn't until 1978 that the signs of something even greater than expected had begun to show. Led by a trio of outstanding juniors, the Patriots went on to finish the 1978 season 26-2 and won the newly formed Class 4A state title. After that state championship in '78 with the juniors, the hype and expectations were extremely high heading into 1979. Terry Fair, Michael Hunt, and Jeff Malone were the trio of returning seniors that the 1979 team was built around. Fair was a 6'8" McDonald's All-American. He was a man against boys in the paint. He'd go on to reach the 1983 Final Four with UGA and was drafted by the Indiana Pacers. Michael Hunt was a fierce defender that also served as student body president. During his senior year, he picked up coaching after earning a scholarship and playing at Furman. As for Jeff Malone, he was their top jump shooter and then came up huge for them all year long. He went to Mississippi State, set the school's all-time scoring record, and then played 13 years in the NBA, averaging 19 points per game during his career. So seeing what was at stake, Coach Richardson and the team went all in preparing to take on a schedule that would keep the Patriots in the spotlight all season long. Georgia high school basketball had never been considered in the top tier nationally, but that did not stop the Patriots from setting their sights on achieving the mythic goal of a national title. Southwest opened its season against Tennessee High School, that's the actual name, and was a narrow 58-54 winner after leading 34-21 at the half. Murphy High School got beat 78-38 in the next game, and then the team got ready to play its crosstown rival, Northeast Macon, at the Macon Coliseum. All these games were sold out. That's why they played there. Northeast gave Southwest its only 2 losses during the 1978 season. That was their 26-2 run to the state title. The only 2 games they lost were to Northeast. And the atmosphere at these games was unequaled. Southwest took their first matchup of the '79 season 78-73, but they would have to defeat the Raiders 3 more times before the season was finished. After picking up several more in-state victories, Southwest got set to take on Oak Hill Academy, St. John's Prep, both in the Tom Porter Classic. Fair had 26 points and 20 rebounds as Southwest beat Oak Hill 80-59. That was the game that reached national headlines. Okay, what's going on with this team from Georgia? They just came into this tournament and beat the crap out of Oak Hill. Terry Fair had 26 points, 20 rebounds, said he's a man against boys, just utterly dominated that matchup. And then later in the tournament, they beat St. John's 55-48 and then returned back to Georgia with more clout than ever. Southwest performance against Atlanta's top powerhouses added to the ever-growing spotlight. The Patriots met with Baylor out of Tennessee at the old Omni, now State Farm Arena. For a showdown at the old Omni in Atlanta. Southwest led 43-35 and then dominated the next 2 quarters to cruise to a 94-57 win. They were absolutely rolling at this point. The team was not just entering the national polls, they were aggressively climbing them. Almost done. We're getting to the championship. So a crowd of 9,000 packed the Coliseum to see Southwest and Northeast. Southwest won 71-57 and improved to 19-0 on the season. Then the region tournament arrived. It was clear Southwest was in reach of its goal of the national title, but the pressure was obviously building to not have any hiccups. They needed to be perfect. So they won 63-54 over Northeast. That was their 3rd meeting of the season. That was the closest one yet, and it gave them the top seed in the tournament. Southwest opened the playoffs. They beat Columbus 82-46, Tompkins 104-57, and then Heritage 75-58. And Wouldn't you guess it, set up a showdown with Northeast, the fourth one of the year. The Patriots entered the game with a 27-0 record and were the number one ranked team in the nation. Northeast was 24-4, with 3 of those losses coming to the Patriots and the other one coming to St. John's. They also participated in that national tournament. The Coliseum was packed with more than 10,000 fans to witness this historic showdown. It had been building not just during the 79 season, during the 78 season, when Northeast beat them twice, but they still ended up winning it. So this game was wild. Northeast pulled ahead 48-38 in the second half and led Southwest 53-51 with 6 minutes left, but Southwest answered with an overwhelming run and closed it out for a 69-60 victory, clinching a perfect season and the national #1 ranking. And so that happened in 1979. That was a huge milestone for the state of Georgia. I just wanted to share that story to show what's at stake this weekend for this new generation of teams to go there and win a state title on that same floor where all that history has happened. It's going to be outstanding, and it is obviously tipped off. But we're going to be back tomorrow. Najee will probably touch on some of the results from Wednesday while previewing the next 3 days. You can go to scoreatl.com, download on the right tab our state championship guide. It has all the rosters, team previews, and a lot of context on who has won previous state titles. But thank you for joining us today. Thank you, John, for coming on, and we will see you tomorrow and then on Friday.